Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Hey, look, Chris Colbert has Cosby eye. That could be the reason why he lost the fight last night, is because Chris Colbert has Cosby eye. Now, I was having a conversation, man, and of course, when I'm talking to some people, hey, look, I don't know everything. They point things out to me, and I can admit where it's like, you know what, you make a good point. Maybe I changed my opinion. But I was having a conversation, and I was talking about Chris Colbert, and I was like, maybe, his left eye, and the fact that it's kind of half open, maybe that's creating some problems for him. And I brought up David Reid, who was an amazing boxer. If you don't remember David Reid, he was an Olympian, won a gold medal, but his retina was causing him more and more trouble before he retired because he didn't want to lose his eyesight. David Reid had suffered an eye injury in the 1995 Olympic trials, and then after several surgeries as a professional, he continued to suffer from something called ptosis. So the thing is, when I look at David Reid's eye, and I remember him fighting Felix Tito Trinidad, which he was busting Trinidad's ass, boy. But then he started getting touched by Trinidad, and Trinidad having his illegally wrapped hands and all that shit. He started to catch Reid, and as Reid's career continued to progress, I think Reid was a guy like Fernando Vargas who would just move too fast. He had a lot of talent, a lot of power, but ultimately that eye was his downfall. If he would have had two good eyes, he would have probably gone on to do more great things in boxing. But the Cosby eye is something that we're seeing more and more in these young fighters, and Chris Colbert seems to be suffering from the Cosby eye now. I didn't hear much from him last night after his loss to Valenzuela. But just watching his face and watching that eye and seeing how he got hit with that right hook, it makes me wonder if the Cosby eye syndrome that he's suffering from, if he's struggling to see out of his Cosby eye. Because it's already kind of half closed, so it doesn't really take much. You figure it won't take much for an opponent to bang that eye up and close it all the way. Matter of fact, in some fights when you see fighters' eyes are half closed, their vision is severely impaired. So maybe Chris Colbert is actually going into fights with his vision severely impaired because he's suffering from the Cosby eye syndrome. Now, going forward, I don't know what is the fix, what can be done for Chris Colbert, because his attitude sucks. But just to be fair about Chris Colbert and taking a look at him and his circumstances, something beyond his control, the Cosby eye is something that he may have to consider, going in for surgery, because I'd hate to hear that, his professional boxing career, although he's 27, I think if he was to retire right now, where he's kind of in his prime and he probably still has another 5 or 6 years of boxing to go, if he can, sustain himself and avoid getting hit with those shots that he doesn't see because of the Cosby eye syndrome. I still think Chris Colbert has a lot to give, but again, you think about David Reid, and David Reid having to cut his boxing career short because he also had Cosby eye. It's just something that is, a topic that we should be discussing. I think it's a conversation. So we'll see what he does when they go back to the drawing board and to see what they need to do. Because when you got guys like Reid, like Chris Colbert, that have stellar amateur boxing careers, and you've seen them before where they've been able to kind of culminate and come from behind in fights which they were losing, that tells you that there's something special about them. Although David Reid was a gold medalist, Chris Colbert was a standout amateur star in New York. They have the pedigree and they have the will to fight and to find a way to win. But sometimes when you're severely handicapped, like how David Reid was and Chris Colbert is with the Cosby eye, I just think their upside isn't as great as what it could be if they were to go and get the Cosby eye, like for Chris Colbert to go and have that Cosby eye repaired. That being said, we'll see what's next for him. The Cosby eye syndrome is something that has plagued fighters before. A lot of times you see it in a fight where a fighter gets hit a few times, the eye starts to close. But when you get a guy like Chris Colbert who's already coming into a fight when his left eye is already naturally half closed from the Cosby eye syndrome, it just makes you wonder, man, just how much further can a guy like him go who relies a lot on his sight, on his reflexes and sheer athleticism to get through a fight. Now, when the eyesight obviously is becoming a bit of an issue, I think the athleticism can only get you so far. It's just like in fighting. You need 2 hands. You need 2 legs. And you also need 2 eyes. And right now, Chris Colbert has 1.5 eyes because he's suffering from the Cosby eye syndrome. That being said, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. We'll see if he goes in for surgery, what he decides to do, because the Cosby eye, I think, contributed to his loss last night, in addition to his sheer ignorance and suck-ass attitude. Y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.